It is day 500. The body still hurts, the balance is still low, the relationship has not been restored. The door you believed would open remains closed, and the prayer you once spoke with fire now comes from a heart that is simply trying not to collapse under the weight of another unchanged morning. On the first day, you expected movement. You prayed with confidence. You stood upon the promise. But weeks became months, and months became years. Now you are carrying questions you hardly dare to speak. Was I ever heard? Did I misunderstand God? Did I fail somewhere? Or has heaven forgotten my name? Hear me carefully. Those questions do not make you wicked. Weariness is not rebellion. A wounded heart is not necessarily an unbelieving heart. This is not a message for the person who has never prayed. It is for the one who prayed and kept praying, who believed and kept standing, who has done everything he knew to do and still sees no visible change. There are two easy answers, and neither will sustain you. The first tells you to pretend nothing hurts, smile over the wound, hide the report, call grief, victory, and confusion peace. But faith is not falsehood. It does not require you to deny the mountain. The second answer is surrender. It lets the pain interpret God, lets delay name the future, and lets one unfinished chapter pronounce the verdict over the whole story. We will accept neither. But before I give you the confession that can survive day 500, we must establish what confession truly is and what it is not. We must learn why honest lament does not cancel faith, why a private deadline can quietly turn expectation into accusation, and how covenant truth, responsible action, and patient trust can stand together while the answer remains unseen. Because the first day tests your excitement, the long wait tests your foundation. When visible evidence supplies no encouragement, the mouth begins revealing what the heart has crowned as final. And here is where the deeper battle begins. Delay does not merely leave circumstances unchanged. If you do not recognize what it is doing, it gradually changes your language, first about the problem, then about yourself, and finally about God. At first, waiting often feels almost like expectancy. You watch every movement, you interpret every phone call, every small improvement, every unexpected conversation as the possible beginning of the answer. You rise believing, perhaps today, your prayer has energy, because hope still seems close enough to touch. But when the signs repeatedly lead nowhere, expectation can become surveillance. You check the body again, you check the account again, you inspect the other person's words again. You search every morning for evidence that heaven has finally moved. Prayer ceases to be fellowship and begins to feel like anxious monitoring. You are no longer resting in God. You are measuring Him by the hour. Then comes the accusation. Perhaps I did not believe strongly enough. Perhaps I spoke the wrong sentence. Perhaps one moment of fear destroyed everything. Perhaps someone more disciplined, more spiritual, more consistent would have received the answer by now. Hear me carefully. This is where a weary believer can turn confession into an examination he is always failing. Every feeling becomes evidence against him. Every imperfect word becomes another charge in the record. He begins to believe that God's response depends upon his ability to remain emotionally unbroken. But no human being can live under that burden. And when self-accusation has exhausted the heart, resignation often enters quietly. It does not announce itself as unbelief. It sounds like realism. Nothing ever changes. This is simply my portion. God helps other people, but not me. I should stop expecting anything. Those sentences do more than report fatigue. They interpret God. They name you as forgotten. They take today's condition and appoint it as the prophet of tomorrow. Picture a courtroom. Every morning, circumstance takes the witness stand. Pain testifies, lack testifies, silence testifies. Another closed door presents its evidence. None of these witnesses knows the whole case, but because they speak daily and visibly, an exhausted heart begins accepting their testimony as the final verdict. Now, being tired is not the verdict. Weeping is not the verdict. Saying, "This hurts, and I do not understand," is not the verdict. Those are honest descriptions of your present condition. But saying, "Therefore God has abandoned me, and nothing good remains possible," is an interpretation. It gives delay authority it was never assigned. So listen to your repeated sentences, not to condemn yourself, but to discover where weariness has begun hardening into agreement. Ask the question plainly, What has this waiting been teaching my mouth to say about God? Once that hidden testimony is exposed, it must not be answered with louder strain. It must be answered from a standing that existed before the delay began, a covenant standing the delay cannot overturn. Now we come to the foundation beneath every enduring confession. Faith does not begin with your effort to persuade an unwilling God. It begins with what God has already established through Christ. 1 Corinthians 6:20 says, "Ye are bought with a price." Notice the language, bought. A transaction has occurred. A price has been paid. Belonging has been settled. The blood of Christ is not merely a memory of suffering. It is the evidence that ownership has changed. That means the long wait has not made your life abandoned territory. Your mind still belongs to God when anxiety presses against it. Your body still belongs to God while it requires care and strength has not returned. Your future still belongs to God while the next chapter remains hidden. The circumstance may be unresolved, but your belonging is not. The orphan voice says, "If my father loved me, surely I would have seen the answer by now." The child says, "I do not understand this silence, but I still have a place before my father." The orphan withdraws until he can present a perfect record. The child draws near because access was opened by another's perfect work. Hebrews 10:19 speaks of boldness to enter through the blood of Jesus. That boldness is not confidence in 500 days of flawless believing. It is not confidence that you never cried, questioned, or spoke from exhaustion. It is confidence in the price already paid. Hear me carefully. An unresolved case in your circumstances does not reopen the settled case of your acceptance. The pain may continue demanding attention. The bill may require action. The relationship may still need wisdom, truth, and patient work. But none of these has authority to revoke your identity or close the door through which Christ brought you near. This is why identity must come before resistance. Before you address the mountain, establish who is speaking. Before you answer fear, establish whose you are. Before you make declarations about the future, settle your standing in the present. You are not speaking as an outsider trying to earn recognition. You are speaking as one redeemed, received, and brought near. Now, covenant standing does not mean you know why every answer is delayed. It does not place the calendar in your hand. It does not make you sovereign over another person's choices or over every process unfolding beyond your sight. Standing gives you access, not omniscience, belonging, not control. So begin here, not with the outcome, not with the timetable, not with an attempt to make yourself feel powerful. Begin with the truth delay cannot overturn. I belong to God in this unresolved place. Say it when you feel strong. Say it when you feel nothing, not as a charm, but as covenant accuracy. And once the standing of the speaker is settled, we can finally ask what confession is meant to do, because your words were never given to force God's hand. If your words were never given to force God's hand, then what are they for? Romans 10:10 gives us the order. With the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. The heart receives, the mouth expresses. Inward trust and outward speech stand together in agreement with God. That is confession. It is not noise placed over an unconvinced heart. It is not a religious incantation. It is not the anxious repetition of a sentence until heaven finally submits to your urgency. You cannot increase God's faithfulness by increasing your volume. You cannot obligate Him to follow a private timetable by repeating a verse a certain number of times. And you cannot purchase an answer with perfect phrasing. Words are not coins inserted into a spiritual machine. One posture says, "If I speak forcefully enough, perhaps I can make God act." The other says, "Because God is faithful, I will not let this circumstance teach my heart to call Him unfaithful." One speaks from panic. The other speaks from standing. One attempts to create a dependable God. The other answers life from the knowledge that God is dependable already. Now, repetition has a proper place. The mind is surrounded by recurring reports. The symptom returns, the balance appears again, the memory reopens its record, and the unanswered question arrives every morning. Speaking the word repeatedly can redirect attention and train the inward life. But repetition becomes confession only when truth begins governing interpretation and conduct. If you confess peace and then spend the day obeying every instruction fear gives, the issue is not that you failed to speak loudly enough. The issue is that fear still occupies the seat of government. If you confess provision, but refuse necessary counsel, honest planning, or diligent work, the words remain separated from action. If you confess forgiveness but continue approaching God as a condemned outsider, the mouth has learned a sentence the heart has not yet received. This is why pressure changes the mouth. The mind may admire a promise, while the heart remains ruled by visible evidence, old wounds, or painful memory. Then the crisis comes, and the governing belief speaks. Do not use that discovery to condemn yourself. Use it to diagnose the place that needs renewed truth. An inconsistent sentence is not proof that God has rejected you. It is an invitation to slow down, return to the Word, and bring heart, mouth, and conduct back into agreement. Confession does not create God's faithfulness. It prevents the circumstance from redefining that faithfulness within you. But before any confession can survive a long wait, one distinction must be settled. Can you acknowledge that something hurts without surrendering to it? Can you describe a present condition without allowing that condition to pronounce the final verdict? That is where truthful faith must now draw the line. You may be asking, if the pain is still present, am I supposed to say it is not there? If the report is serious, must I pretend I never received it? No. Faith does not deny the mountain. Jesus told the believer to address it. Faith does not erase the figures on an unpaid obligation, conceal the physician's report, or call a broken relationship whole while trust remains shattered. Faith recognizes the condition, but refuses to enthrone it. There is a difference between a condition and a conclusion. There is pain in my body, is an observation about the present. Nothing can change, is a prediction about the future. This relationship is wounded, describes something that needs truth, wisdom, and repair. God has abandoned us, interprets God through the wound. I do not yet see the answer, acknowledges limited sight. There is no answer, claims knowledge you do not possess. Do you see the dividing line? 2 Corinthians 4:18 distinguishes between what is seen and what is unseen, between what is temporary and what endures. It does not tell you that visible things are imaginary. It tells you they are not ultimate. The visible report matters because it may guide today's action. It does not possess authority to define God's character or pronounce the final sentence over your life. Truthful faith can therefore speak in two clauses. There is pressure, but grace is present. My body needs care, but it is not abandoned. The obligation is real, but lack will not become my identity. The answer remains unseen, but silence is not proof of rejection. The first clause tells the truth about the battle. The second refuses to surrender the government of the heart to that battle. And because faith is not fantasy, it acts responsibly. Receive treatment when treatment is needed. Make the difficult call. Ask for counsel. Correct the mistake. Review the account. Tell the truth to the person who can help. Rest when the body requires rest. These actions do not betray covenant confidence. They can express it. The body belongs to God, so care for it. Your responsibilities belong before God, so face them honestly. Do not use religious language to hide information from a physician, counselor, family member, pastor, or anyone entrusted with helping you. Concealment is not confession. Recklessness is not boldness. God does not require deception as evidence of trust. Hear me carefully. Pain may testify, but it is not the judge. Facts may inform your next action, but they cannot name your father or write the whole future. Let them occupy their proper place, important, present, and limited. But Scripture gives us more than this distinction. It gives us a language in which sorrow can speak directly to God without becoming surrender, where questions and trust can remain in the same prayer. That language is lament. Lament is not faith turning away from God. It is pain turning toward Him. It does not take suffering as evidence that the covenant has disappeared. It carries suffering into the relationship the covenant established. Lament does not stand outside the Father's house announcing that no one lives there. It enters, sometimes trembling, sometimes weeping, and speaks to the Father because the door remains open. This is its movement. Name what hurts. Ask the question you have been afraid to ask. Remember who God has revealed Himself to be. Request His help. Then choose the next posture of trust. The order matters. You say, "Father, my body is weary. and I do not understand why strength has not returned. You say, this need remains, and I cannot see the provision. You say, this family is fractured, and every attempt at restoration appears to fail. You say, I have asked for direction, but the road is still hidden. That is not betrayal, that is prayer. There is a vast difference between asking, how long, and declaring, never, how long. Still addresses God. It still expects that the silence is not the end of the conversation, never closes the future, dismisses hope, and appoints the present condition as final authority. Lament moves toward God even when it cannot yet move beyond grief. Despair, rehearsed without relationship, circles the wound until the wound becomes the whole world. Lament places the wound before God and refuses to carry it alone. This protects the heart on both sides. It protects you from emotional suppression, the strain of pretending you feel nothing. And it protects you from uncontrolled prediction, the temptation to turn what you feel today into a prophecy over every tomorrow. But perhaps you are afraid that naming the pain will become a second confession and cancel your faith. Hear me carefully. Pain submitted to God is not pain crowned above God. Tears do not revoke covenant standing. Questions do not erase belonging. Honest words spoken to the Father do not make you an orphan. They reveal that you still know where home is. So when language fails, begin here. Father, this is what hurts. This is what I cannot understand. This is what I know of you. I belong to you, and you remain faithful. Help me. Show me how to walk today. Not next year, not through every imagined outcome. Today. Yet even honest lament can become brittle when the heart has made a hidden agreement with a date. Many believers are not only waiting for an answer, they are waiting for it by a deadline God was never consulted about. And when that date passes, the calendar begins testifying against the covenant. Perhaps you never spoke the deadline aloud. You only carried it within you. Lord, let the answer come before the appointment. Provide before the payment is due. Restore this family before the anniversary. Give me direction before I have to make this decision. Or perhaps the deadline was more desperate. I cannot endure another month like this. The need may be completely legitimate. The appointment matters. The obligation is real. The anniversary carries pain. A decision may truly be urgent. Faith does not forbid specific requests. It does not rebuke the child for telling the father exactly where the pressure lies. But here is where urgency can quietly become control. The date ceases to be part of the request and becomes the standard by which God is judged. If the answer arrives before it, God is faithful. If the date passes unchanged, the heart begins building a case against him. Expectation attaches itself to the calendar. The calendar advances. The appointed day arrives and passes. Disappointment becomes accusation. God did not come when I needed him. Accusation becomes resignation. I will never trust like that again. The calendar has become sovereign. Faith asks specifically, but it does not claim mastery over every process, every person, or every timetable. It can pray urgently without pretending to possess the whole record. It can say, Father, I need help before this date, while refusing to say, if you do not answer in the form and hour I chose, your faithfulness is disproved. Romans 4 presents Abraham holding to God's promise while the visible conditions became less favorable. Time did not make fulfillment appear easier. Yet the promise remained the governing word, because its authority rested in the one who spoke it, not in the cooperation of the calendar. But hear me carefully. A long wait does not prove that every personal desire is a divine promise. Persistence must remain teachable. You may need wisdom. You may need correction. You may need to release a form of the answer that God never guaranteed. Covenant confidence is not stubborn attachment to every private expectation. It is openness to God's truth, even when that truth redirects you. So replace deadline language with daily language. Not, I must understand everything by Friday, but I will trust today. Not, this must happen before I can continue, but I will listen, obey, and take the faithful step available now. Ask urgently, act responsibly, hold the calendar with an open hand. Because delay may test your interpretation, expose your expectations, and deepen your dependence. But delay alone cannot prove abandonment. And Scripture gives us images for this hidden territory of waiting. A seed beneath the soil, a promise carried through years, and a prayer heard before its answer became visible. Consider a seed buried beneath the soil. On the surface, there is no movement, no color, no visible evidence of life. If you judged only by appearance, you might declare that the seed had failed. Yet the unchanged ground does not possess enough information to tell you what is happening beneath it. That image can reassure the waiting heart, but hear me carefully. You do not need to invent a hidden story to preserve your faith. You do not have to claim that you know which door God is arranging, which person He is repositioning, or which unseen process explains the delay. Trust does not require imaginary details. It requires confidence in God where details have not been disclosed. Abraham faced visible evidence that grew less encouraging with time. His body aged. Sarah's condition did not naturally improve. The passage of years appeared to testify against the promise. Yet Romans 4 shows him continuing to give weight to the one who had spoken. He did not need to pretend that age was unreal. He refused to let age become a higher authority than God's faithfulness. Then consider Daniel. He prayed, and for 21 days the visible world offered no answer. When the messenger finally arrived, Daniel learned that his words had been heard from the beginning. The silence had told him nothing reliable about whether heaven had received his prayer. Now, that account does not authorize us to assign the same invisible cause to every delay. We cannot take one revealed event and use it to explain every unanswered prayer. But it establishes something vital. Your senses do not have access to the whole record. Apparent stillness cannot testify competently about everything beyond your sight. So separate what you may know from what you may not know. You may know that God remains faithful. You may know that access to the Father remains open through Christ. You may know that obedience is possible today. You may not know the cause of the delay. You may not know its schedule. You may not know the form the visible answer will finally take. This is expectant humility, confidence without pretense, hope without invented certainty, endurance without control. Compulsive checking cannot give you what revelation has withheld. Examining the symptom every hour, refreshing the account, searching every conversation for a sign, and measuring every day for movement only asks incomplete evidence to supply complete assurance. It cannot. Perseverance is not payment. You are not accumulating enough difficult days to purchase God's response. Perseverance is the refusal to let incomplete information redefine the one you trust. It says, I do not know everything occurring in this wait, but I will not call God absent merely because my sight is limited. Return to the courtroom. The unchanged report may testify truthfully about the present condition. Let it speak within those limits. But it is not qualified to testify about God's absence, God's indifference, or the whole future. Now this must become daily practice. Not a strained performance, not endless monitoring, a sustainable rhythm for mornings, moments of pressure, necessary action, and nights when the answer still has not appeared. Let me give you a daily rule for the long wait. It has 4 movements: the morning, the pressure point, the practical step, and the evening release. Begin in the morning before the unresolved circumstance is permitted to name you. Before you read the message, inspect the symptom, open the account, or replay yesterday's disappointment. Establish your standing. I belong to God in this unresolved place. Identity first, not panic first, not battle first, belonging first. Then name the condition before God. Be accurate, but do not rehearse catastrophe. Give the details required for honest prayer, wise care, and responsible decisions. You do not need to enlarge the problem until it fills the entire room. Next, choose one covenant truth, not 20 declarations spoken in anxious succession. One truth your heart can receive. God remains faithful. I am accepted in Christ. His grace is sufficient for today. Speak it slowly. Identify the conclusion it corrects. If fear says, you have been forgotten, answer with belonging. If delay says, nothing is possible, answer that the present is not the whole record. Do not chant, agree. Then the pressure point comes. The pain rises. The notice arrives. The conversation disappoints you. Catch the sentence forming in your mouth. This will never change. I cannot survive this. God has left me here. Stop at the verdict. Do not deny the fact. Correct the conclusion. Say, this is difficult, but it is not permitted to define God or dictate the whole future. That is disciplined speech, truthful about the condition, governed by covenant. Now take the next faithful step. Receive treatment, complete the work, make the call, ask forgiveness, seek counsel, prepare carefully, rest without guilt. Give where generosity is genuinely possible. Faith does not merely speak, it walks. And stop checking every hour for proof. Review the facts when responsible action requires it, but do not make every symptom, message, or number a fresh trial of God's character. Set appropriate times to look. Then return your attention to the work and grace assigned to this day. Do not wait alone. Invite trusted people to stand with you, not as inspectors who correct every weary phrase, but as companions who can remind you of truth, pray with you, and offer practical care when your strength is low. Then comes evening. Tell the Father what still hurts. Give thanks for the grace that carried you through this day, even if the visible condition did not change. Release the unfinished outcome before you sleep. Father, I have done what I knew to do today. What remains beyond my reach, I return to you. This rhythm is not a transaction. It does not purchase an answer through disciplined performance. It trains you to remain honest without despair, active without panic, and covenant conscious without pretending to control the result. Practice it on strong days. Practice it on weak days. Practice it when nothing visible moves. We have established your standing. We have made room for pain. We have removed the false deadline and built a daily rule. Now the answer promised on day 500 can finally be spoken, a confession brief enough for a weary heart, but strong enough to survive an unresolved life. We began with one question. What do you say on day 500 when the prayer remains unanswered and the condition remains unchanged? The answer must be honest enough to stand beside pain, strong enough to endure delay, and simple enough to speak when the heart is tired. Here it is. God remains faithful. What I see today is not the whole story. I will do the next faithful thing He gives me to do. The first line is covenant confidence. God remains faithful does not mean you understand the silence. It does not claim secret knowledge of the timetable. It means the unanswered question has not altered God's character, revoked your access, or erased your belonging. The second line places the visible condition within its proper limits. What I see today is not the whole story, does not deny the report, the need, or the wound. It refuses to let partial evidence issue a final verdict. The third line turns confession into active perseverance. I will do the next faithful thing does not demand tomorrow's map. It asks for today's step. If you are waiting for healing, receive wise care and guard your heart from despair. If you are waiting for provision, face the numbers, seek counsel, work diligently, and refuse the identity of lack. If you are waiting for reconciliation, tell the truth, make peace where you can, and do not attempt to control another person. If you are waiting for direction, obey what is already clear while the farther road remains hidden. If you carry a burden no one sees, bring it before the Father and invite trustworthy people to help you bear it. Now speak the confession. Do not wait until your emotions agree. Speak it slowly, then name the act of faithfulness available today. God remains faithful. What I see today is not the whole story. I will do the next faithful thing He gives me to do. You may be weary, but weariness is not abandonment. The matter may remain unresolved, but unresolved does not mean unheard. You may still be waiting, but waiting has not erased the price by which you were brought near. Day 500 may still contain an unanswered question. Let it contain the question. But do not let it supply the final answer about God. God remains faithful. What I see today is not the whole story. I will do the next faithful thing He gives me to do.